everybody. This is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about how wearing a scapular or doing some private devotion doesn't get you an automatic admission into heaven. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto. Secutor in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. So we have similar episodes here. I have an episode on should Catholics bury the St. Joseph statue when they're trying to sell a house. And I also have episodes here on private revelation and how you're not entitled to believe in them. And so I think it's important to clarify this because there are people, just like there's people in all parts of the world who have a misunderstanding of the Catholic faith, and sometimes will have a syncretist view of the Catholic faith, meaning that they'll merge Catholicism or what they know to be Catholicism with other faiths to kind of do a blend. I see this quite a bit where I live in South Texas, where you can go to curandismo stores or stores that will sell Catholic stuff, but also stuff that's mixed with curandismo, which is kind of like a mixture of folklore and some Santeria stuff. And so like people who are good Catholics, if they think that they got the ojo from somebody or somebody gave me the stink eye or they want somebody to fall in love with them, they'll go see these curanderos or these essentially folklore healing witch doctors who will do various things to them. And of course, this is not Catholic. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that wearing a scapular is similar to this, but they do have some commonalities. It's relying on magic or magical thinking. So look, step one, we've talked about it here before. Public revelation is what Catholics need to believe. Public revelation ended with the death of the last apostle. Public revelation is in sacred oral tradition, the Bible. Everything after that, after the apostolic age, is private revelation. So even ones that are upheld and lauded, such as the most famous Marian apparitions, let's say at Fatima. I think we talked about this with Medjugorje as well. These are all private revelation, and anything that comes out with that, when the church approves these apparition sites as being worthy of devotion, doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with every word that's been coming out of this devotion. You see this played out with saints. Because a saint has been canonized by the church as being in heaven. That's what being a saint is. That's what canonization means. It doesn't mean the church agrees with every written word that saint has ever said. And you can go through various writings of saints, whether it's Saint Faustina or even someone like Saint Thomas Aquinas, who have said things in their writings that are not necessarily contrary to the deposit of the faith, but maybe questionable to it. So when it comes to the scapular, and this is connected to, of course, some of the private apparitions, that if you die wearing a scapular, you shall go to heaven. Now understand that needs to be put in context. And if you believe that wearing a scapular, you're going to go to heaven, even though you have sin on your soul, mortal sin, for example, and you've killed people or whatever it is, but you know what, I'm wearing this rope around my neck, it's a get out of jail free card, then you're not understanding the meaning of these things. So how do we get to heaven? By being in a state of grace and not having mortal sin. Yes, we might have to go to purgatory for a variety amount of time to cleanse ourselves, to prepare ourselves like a narthex to enter the sanctuary, but ultimately we'll go to heaven. So if you're wearing a scapular, or let's say you're doing a daily rosary or some other devotion, that is great as long as it's in alignment with you being in a state of grace, you having charity in your heart, love of Christ in your heart, and other things. But I think some people like the idea of I wear a scapular and if I die, I'll go straight to heaven. Because look, we're all fallen. We all have an attachment to sin. And on one level, it is comforting to think, and if you believe this erroneously, that if I'm wearing a scapular when I die, I'll go straight to heaven, it's understandable why people would want to believe that, because it gives you a certain amount of comfort. But it's not true. You have to be in a state of grace. And if you want to be wearing the scapular because a saint said that, okay. But it's like, so if we're not wearing a scapular, we're not going to go to heaven? No, it's not like that at all. There's comfort that can be derived by that. Certainly, there's hosts of private devotions that are worth our time and attention. But as I mentioned before, if you don't want to do a rosary every day, if you don't want to do a chaplet of divine mercy every day, you don't have to, and you're still a Catholic in good standing. And it's the same thing here. Wearing a scapular is an option, or using a sacramental is an option. But those who don't utilize these, are not any less of a Catholic than those who are. Now, people from the far right, and I hate to say this, and we have an episode here on it, like, are we Pharisaic? We can be Pharisaic in nature when we think that we're better than other people. And who did Christ condemn the most in the Gospels? Are the hypocrites, or the Pharisees, right? You are like whitewashed tombs on the outside. You focus too much on extrinsic things, and that's what's corrupting you on the inside. You worry about eating kosher and kashrut, but you don't worry about all the filth that comes out of your mouth. And so we don't want to be like the Pharisees. And there are Catholics who think, I'm better than other Catholics because I do X, Y, and Z. And that in itself demonstrates that, no, brothers and sisters in Christ, you're not a better Catholic because you don't have charity in your heart. So in closing, have a devotion to Mary, to the saints, if you like, if that's something that edifies your faith. Like, I like to read the Bible because it edifies my faith. I like to do the rosary. I do it in Latin every day because it edifies my life. I like to meditate on the mysteries of Christ, and I like saying in Latin because it connects me to various saints of the Latin rite from centuries past. But I know that I don't need to do these things. They're ancillary, and they can embellish and edify my faith, but they're not core to my faith. And the core to our faith is very simple. We can get obfuscated with all this extra stuff, but it's very simple. Stay in a state of grace. Go to Mass weekly. Go to confession and the Eucharist at least once a year. At least, that's all you have to, at least canonically. Be in a state of grace, treat people with respect, do works of mercy. This will help you get into heaven. But all these other things, it's superstitious and magical thinking. If you truly believe that wearing a scapular but not being in a state of grace is going to get you to heaven. And look, I'm not mischaracterizing all people who wear a scapular, please understand. But there are going to be people in this world who actually believe that. Just like there's people in corners of this world who are Catholic who actually believe that we worship Mary as a goddess, right? There's always going to be a misunderstanding of the faith. That is pretty normal when you have 1.2 billion Catholics in the world. But go to the Church's teaching. The Church's teaching is I should say, I'm in conformity with what I'm saying here with the Church's teaching. The Church is not in conformity with me. I'm just parroting what the Church says. So understand. If you want to wear a scapular, that's great, but understand the context behind wearing one. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you agree or disagree, until next time, take care. God bless and pray.